Well, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for tuning into this brand new interview. I have someone today, very, very, very special indeed, because we finally got this interview going after many, many attempts of trying to schedule something. We finally got something together, and I'm very thankful and very happy to be interviewing this individual. You might have seen him on this one wrestling promotion called Ronin Pro Wrestling, where he was his last match in Ronin was actually against Sonjay Dutt. Can you how can you even compare that? He also he was also just on AEW Dark facing off against one chairman named Shawn Spears. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, introducing the Hammer, Alex Chamberlain. How are you?
Yeah, that's a great intro, man. Appreciate it. Good.
Oh man, it's a pleasure getting to talk to you, especially after your very dominant performance against Shawn Spears on AEW Dark.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. It was a lot of fun. It definitely was.
Yeah, so I always start these interviews off with a spitball or fireball question because, of course, I always like to get the mood in or the vibe in. So one of the things that when I was researching about your career and kind of getting a feel of who Alex Chamberlain is, what I find interesting is that you were, in the beginning of your career, you were in a tag team with one of your trainers. And so can you kind of talk to us about, was it weird kind of having that start in the tag team wrestling perspective, or was it like any opportunity I could get?
No, I think it's best for a lot of young guys to learn in tag team wrestling because there's a lot less pressure to it's not just on you. So if you get lost, you can always tag in your partner. So, and then they can kind of, bring the match back around. So I learned better. I think it's better in terms of character work too, because it loosens you up when you have a person to work off with, as opposed to when you're out there on your own, you're kind of in your own thoughts, and it's harder to kind of disengage the thinking part of the brain, that part that's like always kind of like a little self-conscious. Whereas when you're around your buddies, you tend to loosen up more and you can kind of get more into it and have a little bit more fun. So I actually thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we definitely saw since the beginning of your career in 2004 all the way till now. It's so great how you see the progression of just the early beginnings and seeing it all unfold now.
Yeah, it's crazy because just the other day someone posted a match that I did in 2006. I completely forgot about it. I just a completely different person. So it's kind of cool that people can still. I was breaking in right when the internet was really taking off for wrestling. It's when YouTube started. It was 2006-ish. So getting matches posted right away. I forgot I even did them. So it's kind of cool to be like, oh wow, yeah, I did do that. Okay, I kind of remember being there that day.
Yeah, it's always cool to look back at those memories and you're like, oh wow, I did become a champion in the East Coast part of wrestling. I remember doing that match.
Yeah, no, it's a cool time, with all the technology around and the social media and everything. It's a lot easier to kind of keep track and keep a history of your records now for wrestling or anything, for your life. You kind of keep it all pretty well organized and compartmentalized, because I have a terrible memory as is, so it's nice to be able to actually look at pictures and be like, oh yeah, I was there. Yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, of course. And of course, for those who don't know Alex Chamberlain, he usually rocks the very famous beard that he always has in the professional wrestling ring, but now he's rocking the clean shaven look. So I'm interested in knowing, do you prefer the beard or do you prefer the clean shaven look?
It depends. I did the beard this time. I haven't done the beard in a few years. I mean, I was pretty well known for it early on. It was nice, but I mean, living in Miami, it's super hot to have it, and they're a pain. Beards are a pain. I don't care what anybody says. They're high maintenance, and it was actually with acting work and in wrestling work, I actually get more clean shaven. So that's really why I keep it more clean shaven, and it's a lot cooler. It's more ergonomical down here.
I know, especially over in the Florida area. I mean, I'm over here in California and it's hot, but I can not imagine out in Florida.
Yeah, the whole country's boiling. Back home where I'm from in Maine, it's the same temperature outside there as in Miami right now. It's 85, 90. And the whole country's burning out.
Yeah. So speaking about your beginnings, of course you are from Bangor, Maine, and you kind of had that beginning of wrestling at a very young age as well, and kind of just working from the very beginnings of the wrestling ring to your career now. Can you talk about what inspired you to become a wrestling fan?
Becoming a wrestling fan, that's as early as I can remember. My mom and my dad both loved wrestling.
Mhm.
I remember when like Raw first started, I was like 7 or 8 years old. My dad would sneak me out on Monday nights and let me watch wrestling for a little bit, because it was on late at night.
Mhm.
But I would always watch like Saturday morning Superstars. I would always catch any pay-per-view. My aunts loved wrestling. They would always have the pay-per-views. It'd be like a little family thing for Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam.
Mhm.
And from there, I mean, it just kind of grew. And it was something it's just always been a part of my life. It's like I can't remember a time where I wasn't a fan of wrestling. It's that far back.
Well, yeah, that's awesome, especially knowing that the passion of pro wrestling has been within you for so long. I mean, it's awesome as someone that, for me as well, I've had a passion for so long that anytime anybody talks about wrestling, I'm like, hey, I'm here for it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're in good company.
Oh, I do appreciate that. So another thing that I did want to talk about, like I mentioned before, your career started in 2004. You've had a lot of top promotions, especially in the East Coast scene. East Coast Pro Wrestling was one of those promotions. Of course, you became a world champion in some of those promotions as well. Can you talk about, what it was like, stepping into a professional wrestling ring for the first time? Was it nerves, or was it like, what, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life?
It was both. I mean, crazy nervous. I still get nervous every time I step into a ring. You like it's a it's a kind of a professional integrity. Like I always want my matches to look good. And I've always, I hold myself to a high standard. So like I always, constantly, like it's not necessarily feel a failure, but like I always want to be spot on with what I do. I take a lot of pride in my craft. But yeah, I can definitely remember my first match for sure. It was in Swanton, Vermont against a guy named Brother Bubba Franklin. It was an outdoor show. It was July 26th. Yeah, because this is just my 17th year anniversary, just like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it was a show was a complete train wreck. Bottom rope broke. Right before my match, started raining. It was a vinyl canvas, so it was super slippery. An old man tried to jump up in the ring and hit my opponent with a wrench. It was absolutely a mess, but it was a lot of fun though. To be honest, all those things going wrong kind of prepared me for like that Murphy's Law of wrestling, like whatever can go wrong will. So it made me very adaptable. I learned really quick to, kind of just roll with things.
Oh yeah, like I always kind of quote my aunt when it comes to this. Life's kind of a roller coaster, so you just kind of have to hang on for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is what it is, man. Like there's a lot of things outside of your control when it comes to wrestling, So it's
Yeah.
just better, and it's just something I try to impart with a lot of the students too. Is just learning to kind of organically adapt and react. Sure.
Yeah, and you did mention before this interview had started that you got to train alongside one very famous Gangrel,
Yeah.
and his school as well. So, can you talk about working with such an iconic legend in the professional wrestling business with Gangrel, and kind of bringing your knowledge to his students and so on and so forth?
Absolutely. No, Gangrel is awesome. I first connected with him in Las Vegas when I first started with Paragon Pro Wrestling. Yeah, he was living in LA at the time.
Mhm.
He was a road agent and a talent on the show. And since he's a Florida guy and I was living in Florida, I did a lot of training with a lot of the guys he knew. His trainer was Rusty Brooks, who's a very established wrestler down here. That was who broke him into wrestling, and then Boris Malenko. But I mean, it's been a privilege to work with him and become a friend of his. He is such an invaluable, invaluable fountain of knowledge when it comes to wrestling. He's done it all. He's got over in Japan. He got over in WWE. He's got over on the Indies. I mean, he's been up until COVID. He was wrestling like no joke, 4 days a week, year round. His schedule he was booked out always. I mean, he would show me his calendar book. 9 months out, 10 months out, all over the world. He was working more than almost every single indie guy period, like on the independents who are active. And also he's running better pace matches, longer matches than most guys half his age. I mean, he's definitely a specimen. He's that last of that real warrior breed of wrestler. You know, that those kind of that gladiator pit guys. You know, the guys came from the 80s and 90s that were hard as nails, and it's kind of cool to kind of pick his brain. He definitely helped shape and mold me into what I am. I've always been picking his brain. I still do. I saw him on Tuesday at the class, and I still ask him questions, and I still go to him for advice. He's been very much a mentor for me. So, and there's no one better that I would rather work with. He's such a good guy. He's super nice.
It's awesome to get knowledge, especially from a former Brood member. I can now see it now that we're having this conversation. I think Alex Chamberlain would have been a great addition to the Brood back in the day.
I would have definitely taken that chance, man. I've gotten to know Christian J really well through convention scenes. I've always kind of run into him, but awesome guy. I've met Edge once in passing. He was a super nice guy when I met him, but both those guys, phenomenal, some of the best tag team wrestlers of all time, in my opinion. You know, and Gangrel's responsibility at a time when he was with the Brood was to educate them. They were young guys. His job was to toughen them up, teach them the ropes, and protect them on the road from making any sort of like crazy mistakes, and just trying to educating him. So like the fact that I get to learn from the same guy that they learn from is pretty cool.
Well, yeah, like I mentioned before, it's absolutely awesome getting that knowledge from Gangrel. I do want to talk about one thing that I've liked to nitpick from your wrestling career thus far, and that's from one wrestling promotion called Ronin Pro Wrestling. You've had lots and lots of success over there. Can you talk about what it was like kind of going into this brand new promotion like Ronin?
Ronin was great because I was kind of involved from day one, from the formation of it. I helped kind of put the roster together and the staff and whatnot. My friend Mike Broder was the one who financed it and put it all together. He really wanted to get into promoting wrestling. He already promotes one other wrestling show for his convention called GalaxyCon, which he runs in 5 different cities. It's called FSCW, Fantasy Super Cosplay Wrestling, and it travels with the convention all over, and it's a really fun show. But then he always wanted to produce an independent show on the side, so it was kind of cool to see like from the ground up like what goes into the mechanics of putting together an indie show. And he spared no expense either. It was nuts. It was like on that first show we had like Tommy Dreamer, we had who else? We had a little convention beforehand. RVD was there, Shane Douglas, I believe, Raven was there. Joel Gertner was part of the staff. Raven was help running things in the back. It was cool. It was like just running around learning from all these guys. It was like basically running with like half the ECW crew. It was awesome. Like in Ronin, since then, I think I've only missed one show out of Ronin. They've had 20 something shows, and it's been some of my best matches have been in there. I've had some really good times. I've made a lot of friends. And it's been cool to see it kind of grow and come to what it's become now. It's definitely one of the premier independents in Florida for sure.
Oh yeah, of course we talk about Ronin. We talk about all the former ECW talent that helped create it and helped really establish that brand, because I think that Ronin is something very different compared to the other Florida scene, wrestling scene promotions. It's like it's very ECW based and it's very old school, which I think that's really missing nowadays in professional wrestling.
Yeah, he Trevor Reed, he's the one who's the promoter, and he owns the company now. He really likes that 3-ring circus feel. He likes a little bit of everything, not just like a more traditional like independent shows now are very fast paced and very like a lot of movement, a lot of action. Whereas like I'm not gonna do that. He knows that. But he likes that kind of wrestling too. He likes the wrestling that I do, so that's why he likes to have me on the show. And he'll have like more technical based guys. He likes to have a lot of women's matches on his shows, which is awesome. He likes to have, occasionally like maybe a hardcore match or no disqualification, and then he likes his go matches, those crazy high flying stuff like Serpentico and Mr. 450 or Mecha Wolf, those kind of guys who can really go. So yeah, it's kind of cool. They give you a little bit of everything there.
Oh yeah, like again, it feels like that old ECW 1990 style. It's like you have the hardcore wrestling, but of course they'll throw in a little bit of cruiserweight action in there.
Yeah,
On top of that, you get a technical masterpiece with Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero. Like it's so just out
yep.
of the blue out there. You just have so many different styles put into this one wrestling show. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like I said, it's been some of the most fun I've had. And it's funny too because we can, since it's more of a college crowd, we can kind of get a little more. We don't have to like filter our stuff as much. I'll curse all day long on those shows because I can. So, and the fans like it. They like that rowdy. They like the rowdiness of it, and they know that they're there to have a fun time. So that's the fun element of it. Is like when it's less restrictive, you can kind of get more creative with things and just kind of dive really into it. It's fun.
Yeah, and speaking about Ronin Pro Wrestling, you had one in particular match that brought my eye out, and that was actually when you went one-on-one with Sonjay Dutt. And that match in particular, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was your last match in Ronin.
No, I had a match with them. I think their last show they did was in like December, November, and that was with Gangrel.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Gangrel. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember a lot of matches. But no, Sanjay was my best match at Ronin, like easily. Like that match was nuts. We both went into that. We're big fans of Game of Thrones, and I think there was like an episode where it was one of the episodes where like they had a battle, and we were both like, "Dude, you want to like do that? Like just have a complete like battle scene, like where people were looking around afterwards, being like, oh, what just happened?" So. And he was all about going for it. And there was a lot of that was his idea. He really wanted to get after it and have because I think he was just getting ready to get done and join WWE. I think he was just about ready to get signed on, and he's a producer there now. Mm-hmm. So I think he wanted to have some really final really big go matches. So I'm all about it. If it's a physical match, sign me up. I love that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of fun. It was just talked out a few things, and the rest of it was just make it up as we go. So it was a blast, and that was a very intense match. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I could tell from your background in acting that you can use that improv skill to test, especially in the wrestling ring. Speaking about your acting career, because you mentioned that earlier in the interview, can you talk to us about how it's been like being in front of the camera as an actor? Like, has it really helped you in your wrestling career, or has it just been so fun that you're like, man, I can do wrestling and I can do acting?
It's both, to be honest. Wrestling has helped me with acting, and acting has helped me with wrestling, because they kind of go hand in hand. Essentially you're just portraying character on TV for wrestling or in a ring. It's a live theater more or less with a stunt show mixed in. So I'm just an actor that can do my own stunts, which actually helps me in acting because I can do fight coordinating, stunt coordinating. I can take my own fall, so I'm actually a little bit more, I'm a little bit more qualified to get extra work, which is nice. And with acting, the cool thing about that, and the reason why I took to it so well is because with acting, with wrestling, you get one take. That's it. Like you're in, you're live. It's you mess up, go with it. Like that's all you get with acting. And you get no feedback either. It's like you don't know you sucked until you go in the back and they go, "What was that, man? Like you did awful," and they'll pick you apart. Whereas with acting, if you do bad, they'll stop and they'll be like, "Hey, man, can you try this look? We can redo it again. Work on your, maybe this line, deliver a little bit differently." So you get that feedback right then and there. So that was really cool. So, and I'm used to doing things in one take, so memorizing script is super easy. So actually, that wasn't a problem. And I prefer to try to do things in one take when it comes to acting, because just get into character, nail it, nail the line, nail the delivery, and that's what I try to do. So that was the cool thing. It was pretty easy to adapt to acting. But they've definitely both helped me. I mean, with acting, it's more of the nuance and the subtlety. It's not big movements. It's not that, with wrestling, it's all like, aha, and big, over the top. Where acting, it's very subtle. It's like little movements, little eye movements, little mouth movements. It's not that hokey, over the top, exaggerated emotion. It's subtle. So they both help. And I love it because it helps me with my promo work. I think it makes my promo work stand out just a little bit more because I can kind of deliver a little bit differently than a standard wrestler would.
Yeah, and I want to applaud you for having a great memory because sadly with me, like when you give me a script, it's like, oh, let me do it a couple times. Where if you just have it like that, that's a gift on its own.
Yeah, I got lucky. I actually have a super terrible memory, but for some reason I can memorize script pretty well. Just because like when I was younger, I would my uncle would help me with like quizzing things and stuff like that, and memorizing stuff. So that was like a big part of my childhood. So memorizing lines was actually not too bad.
Yeah, and of course, not just talking about your acting career, and of course your independent wrestling career, but just happened recently that one Alex Chamberlain, the Hammer himself, just went one-on-one, toe-to-toe with the one and only the chairman Shawn Spears on an episode of AEW Dark. So, can you talk about, before we get into the match, what was the your experience or your reaction when you got that call from AEW saying, you know what, we need you for AEW Dark, and we would love for you to come to the Daily Place and have this opportunity?
When I first got the call, I mean, I thought it was just going to be maybe extra work because I tend to, usually like I've been to some tapings before for AEW. When they came to Miami, I worked that show, but it was like, it was just like extra work, roles they need to fill, like, either as background stuff. And so actually having a match, that was cool. Like, I was like, I didn't know who I was working. I just knew that they were going to give me something to do with the Dark. So that was awesome. I was, definitely full of anticipation for it. And, the week leading up to, that's when the nerves start to kick in. And then nice, almost 6-hour drive from Miami to Jacksonville. So that was nice and racking the whole time. But once you get there, it was awesome. Like, the atmosphere there is so cool. Everyone's so nice. The staff, everyone in charge. I mean, Tony Khan runs such a really well-oiled machine for such a fresh company, and he really knows what he's doing. He runs sports organizations for a living. He runs a professional soccer team and pro football team. So, I mean, I don't, dealing with athletes and dealing with talent, I think just kind of comes naturally to him. So he really knows how to like set everything up for success, for sure.
Oh yeah, and especially I bet, and this is just an assumption here, I bet once you got the reaction of who you were going to face, I think that was one of those mind-blowing moments, especially for someone that has a young career like yourself.
Yeah, he's really good. I actually met Shawn a few years ago. We were both at I was with Jimmy Snuka. He brought us to a show for AFA, and I saw Shawn work. And I mean, even then, this is like going back like 8 or 9 years, and I was like, man, he's good. He was good then. And then he had his run in WWE as the Perfect 10. He's even better. And then working, like, knowing I was going to work with him, honestly, it was a super like sigh of relief because I knew I was going to have a good match. Because Shawn doesn't have bad matches. He's really good. He's a fantastic wrestler. Everything he does makes sense. It looks good. It's real. I mean, then on top of that, I mean, Tully Blanchard, one of the greatest wrestlers, one of the best tag team wrestlers, and one of the great promo men. I mean, that was such a cool opportunity for me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've talked to people that have faced Shawn in the past, like Max Caster, Platinum Max Caster was one of them. A couple that I sadly can't name at this point. But it was, every time that I've spoken to people who have faced Shawn at this point on AEW Dark has had the same or similar kind of reaction. It was like, you know what, it's Shawn, like, oh my God, it's Shawn Spears. Like, I've watched his work and they've been a fan of his work for so long. To me, when I think of Shawn Spears, I don't think of the Perfect 10. I actually think somewhere a little bit further back when in his ECW, WWE ECW run, when he was on his Gavin Spears, and kind of just seeing that transition from then to now, and him working with all these great individuals and great athletes. I mean, hey, I think it's absolutely phenomenal what he is doing in today's professional wrestling world.
Yeah, he's definitely one of their best veterans on hand. I mean, the whole AEW, those guys, man, they're so good. Like, all of them, Bucks, Cody, Kenny, Jericho, obviously one of the greatest of all time, period, on anybody's top 10 list, Mount Rushmore. And then you have guys to learn from, like Arn Anderson, Jake the Snake Roberts, Tully Blanchard, Jerry Lynn's back there,
right.
BJ Whitmer. Like, you have the guys who've just done incredible things that you can pull from and learn from. I mean, it's pretty surreal walking around back there and knowing that there's that much knowledge and that much talent just walking around.
Absolutely. So, Alex, once again, I do want to thank you for being a part of this interview and getting this conversation. But before we go, this is a new segment. This happened in the last interview, so we're going to bring it back in this interview as well. I'm going to give what I call the 3 quick questions. It's a little fun, little, kind of, what's the word? It's like kind of breaking the ice, kind of one of those type of questions. So, the first of the 3 is, well, I'm just going to give them to you fast, and then you can give however response that you have. So, the first question is, out of all the cities that you have traveled to throughout your wrestling career, best city that you have traveled to with the best restaurant or anything food related?
Oh, that's probably going to be probably Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
Love the food there. They have some really awesome steakhouse and barbecue places. And then probably a close second is Louisville, Kentucky. They have amazing barbecue places. I love barbecue. I like steak, burgers. Like I'm in. So and I'm a big bourbon guy. So Louisville has all the distilleries places. Elijah Craig is set up there. So that's usually one of my it's a close toss up between those two. Those are definitely my top 2 cities for food and drink.
That's awesome. Second question. How do I put this? Oh yeah. Most memorable line that you still remember to this day, and this is kind of referring to your acting career.
Honestly, it would have to be Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, and he goes, "I will drink your milkshake." Just I love that when him and Paul Dano, when he goes to Paul Dano and he's explaining to him how the oil drilling works and how he snuck into his land and stole his oil. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. So I love that movie. It's just so good. I'm a huge Daniel Day-Lewis fan. Dude doesn't make a bad film.
I know.
Yeah,
even though to me personally, Daniel Day-Lewis happens to play the perfect, and again, this is just my opinion, the perfect Abraham Lincoln during the Lincoln movie.
Yes. Oh yeah. No. His showing of Lincoln was amazing. I love that movie. So good. And he plays one of the best villains of all time, Bill the Butcher Cutting. And Gangrel, New York is so good. The guy is so dynamic. I'm so jealous that he can just change his voice like that, his mannerisms, his face. He changes his smile. I don't know. The guy's a chameleon. He really is.
And then finally, this is kind of the cheesiest question, but I mean, I got to ask, favorite match thus far?
In my career?
Mm-hmm.
My favorite match, I would have to say the match I'm most proud of is, and I did a Iron Man match with Wes Briscoe in Las Vegas. We basically did 2 in the same day for 2 different tapings. We had to do basically had to wrestle 3 times in one day, and it ended up being almost 2 hours of wrestling, like nonstop action between the 2 of us. And the Iron Man match was our last one, so we were gassed. And we knew we'd go in dude, we're gonna have to go an hour. And obviously in tapings they're long days. You're taping multiple episodes. Fans aren't necessarily going to be the most enthusiastic, especially knowing that you're going to go an hour. That's a level of wrestling that not many guys can do. Period anymore. And so it was a challenge for both of us. For Wes, it was a big deal because his uncle was one of the greatest of all time. Jack Briscoe, his dad's one of the greats up there. Jerry. And so it was a point of pride for him. And for me, I just wanted to know I could do it. And I remember just a half an hour and literally I'm sitting there in a headlock and I remember looking up at him and I'm like, "Hey man, how you doing?" He's like, "Oh, good." I'm like, "This is way easier than I thought." And he's like, we're laughing at each other. I remember we were literally laughing. We were like, "Man, this is so much fun when you actually can cut a nice pace and actually have a lot of, there's a different story and it's a whole different way you structure a match." It was really just so much improvisation and it was cool, and the fans were with it the whole time right until the end. Loved it. And then we basically broke down and cried afterwards because it was really emotional. That was the match I was super proud of that one. It's one that not a lot of people have seen, but it's one that I'm most proud of. I think it was just a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to check that match out too. But once again, thank you so much, Alex, for being a part of this interview. It was great
Thank
to get a great conversation with you. For those who don't know, make sure you guys check him out on AEW Dark, because he is definitely one of the hottest and youngest, brightest stars in professional wrestling. And, of course, check out his match with Shawn Spears, the Hammer versus the Chairman. Definitely a match to see, especially with the most iconic beard. Hopefully, we might see that beard back in professional wrestling. But we probably will.
That's not why I'm feeling. I always change up the look every now and then.
And once again, make sure you guys check out his acting work too. Link will be down in the description below. And once again, thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
And boom. And come on. It's slow.